Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood therapist, and pay no attention to my raggedy nails. I am putting on a new set. But on any note, it is February 22nd, 2025, so it is day 22 in our series of lesser known facts and lesser known people of the culture for Black History Month. So, all right, y'all, today's person of interest. I did not know who this man was before today. I know some of y'all might think that I know everybody that I talk about. Mm-mm. I'm learning with y'all on some of these, and I love learning. I think we all should learn new things daily. We should always be striving to learn more, not just about Black history, but about everything. Now, that being said, when I came across this person at first, I thought they must be of mixed ancestry because that last name is giving Spanish. But in my ignorance, I did not know that this last name of his was a common last name for African American folks. So let's find out about him together, y'all. All right, so let me just say, I don't have a picture of this man. The further back you go in history, the less likely you are going to find a picture of individuals. Whether it be, back then they did portraits and paintings. Depending on how far back you go, you are likely not going to find it. There have been people that I've researched and seen photos of them in portraits and come to find out those are not accurate. So when you are researching folks, be careful when you find pictures, especially of people from like the 1600s, 1700s. Be very careful. Some of those might be inaccurate, especially if we are talking about Black people or indigenous people or people of color. Okay? Now, anyway, we don't need a picture to learn. So, John Chavis, that's why I thought he was Spanish. I was like, but this is a Black man. He was a free Black educator and Presbyterian minister in the American South during the early 19th century. Born in Oxford, North Carolina, he fought for the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. So, why did I choose him for today? Well, because he was the first African American known to attend college in the U.S. He studied with John Witherspoon at the College of New Jersey, which was later renamed Princeton University. He finished his studies at Liberty Hall Academy, which is present day Washington and Lee University in Virginia. That is where he was licensed to preach. Later, while working in Raleigh, North Carolina, he established a private school that was highly regarded and attended by both white and Black students. Look at the years I said. He was born in 1763. So this was in the late 1700s that all of this is happening. Now, as far as John's early life, the exact date of his birth is not known. It is believed that he was born in either 1762 or 1763 in Virginia. Information about his early life is pretty scant as well, with few records to document it. However, there are some things that we know due to documents that have been found. So he served as a soldier during the American Revolutionary War. He enlisted in December of 1778 and served in the 5th Virginia Regiment for 3 years. Captain Mayo Carrington of the regiment wrote in a bounty warrant dated March 1783 that Chavez had faithfully fulfilled his duties and is thereby entitled to all immunities granted to 3 year soldiers. A 1789 tax list of Mecklenburg County, Virginia, shows that he was listed as a free Black man owning one horse. He had married a woman named Sarah Frances Anderson, and they had one son, Anderson Chavis. In 1789, he was employed by Robert Greenwood's estate as tutor to Greenwood's orphans. In the 1790s, he lived in Princeton, New Jersey, where he took private classes under John Witherspoon to prepare for entering the Presbyterian ministry. The recorded minutes of the meetings of the trustees of the College of New Jersey, which later became Princeton University, were dated for September 26, 1792, and included a recommendation by Reverend John Blair that Mr. Todd Henry, a Virginian, and John Chavis, a free Black man of that state, be received on the school's Leslie Fund. After Witherspoon's death in 1794, John transferred to Liberty Hall Academy in Virginia. He arrived at Liberty Hall Academy in Lexington, Virginia in 1795. In the following year, George Washington donated 100 shares of James River Company stock to the school, and that's when the school changed its name to Washington Academy to commemorate that gift. It was later renamed to Washington and Lee University. On November 19th, 1800, John completed with high honors a rigorous theological examination that began on June 11th, 1800 in Virginia. So the exam began in June. He completed it in November. On this date, he was also granted a license to preach by the Presbytery of Lexington, Virginia. 6 months later, with high character recommendations from the Presbytery of Lexington, he was transferred to work under the Hanover Presbytery. In April 1802, he applied for freeman's papers and received them from the Rockbridge County, Virginia court. It was recorded that Chavis has been known to the court for several years and that he has always been considered as a freeman, and they believe him to be such, and that he has always, while in the county, conducted himself in a decent, orderly, and respectable manner, and also that he has been a student at Washington Academy, where they believe he went through a regular course of academical studies. Between 1801 and 1807, he served as a circuit riding missionary for the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church to slaves and free blacks in the states of Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. Some records indicate he also preached to white people during his missionary tours. He went to Raleigh, North Carolina sometime between 1807 and 1809, where he was licensed to preach the Christian gospel by the Orange Presbytery. Although not called by a parish, he continued to preach to black and white congregations in Granville, Orange, and Wake counties. Some of the white congregants even included slaveholders. In 1808, Chavis opened a school in his home where he taught both white and black children. He placed ads in the Raleigh Register to encourage enrollment. At first, he taught both races together, but after some white parents objected, he taught white children during the day and black children in the evenings. He charged white students $2.50 per quarter and black students $1.75 per quarter. As an educator, he taught full time and instructed his college bound white students in Latin and Greek, which were required classical subjects in the colleges and universities of that time. His school was described as one of the best in the state. Students from some of the most prominent white families in the South studied at Chavis's school. Some of those students included Priestley H. Magnum, brother of Senator Willie P. Magnum, Archibald E. Henderson and John L. Henderson, sons of Chief Justice Henderson, Governor Charles Manley, the Reverend William Harris, Dr. James L. Wortham, and Abraham Rencher, Minister of Portugal and Territorial Governor of New Mexico. In his personal life, he maintained a long friendship with one of his white students, Willie P. Magnum, who was elected as a U.S. Senator from North Carolina. For many years, they conducted a correspondence where he often criticized the senator's political positions. He reportedly privately supported the abolition of slavery, greatly disliked President Andrew Jackson, and opposed Magnum's advocacy of states' rights. Now, he did not publicly support abolition and publicly condemned Nat Turner's slave rebellion, positions he likely took out of concern for his own safety and to maintain his status as a freeman and position as an educator, as Southerners expelled free blacks and violently suppressed Turner's rebellion. Now, that little piece of information was not shocking to me. I can understand to an extent trying to save yourself, but as you learn more about him, you realize that saving yourself and doing the right thing doesn't matter when you are dealing with violent, hateful people. Now, after Turner's 1831 rebellion resulted in the murder of dozens of white men, women, and children, slaveholding states quickly passed laws that forbade all blacks to preach. Although Chavis was forced to give up preaching and teaching school, the presbytery continued to pay him $50 a year until his death to support him and his wife. Before his death, Reverend Chavis left the Orange Presbytery and joined the Roanoke Presbytery. The presbytery continued payments to his widow after his death until 1842. At that time, his widow told the presbytery that her family could take care of her and her children. Chavis died in June of 1838 in circumstances that remain unclear. According to his biographer Helen Chavis Otho, the oral tradition suggests that he was killed by whites who did not want him educating blacks. Local legend says that he was beaten to death in his home. In 1986, Otho founded the John Chavis Historical Society, and one of its goals was to locate his gravesite. Dr. George Clayton Shaw wrote the first biography about him, published in 1931. He wrote that he was buried at Walnut Hall, the plantation of Senator Willie P. Magnum, Chavis's former student and friend. After numerous searches for the gravesite, in 1988, members of the John Chavis Historical Society found the old cemetery. The group appealed to the state archaeologist to investigate the site, but this had not occurred as of 2013. The old cemetery was added to the map of Hill Forest, the former Magnum plantation, by Michael Hill, historian of the North Carolina Archives. Chavis is the subject of historical markers in both North Carolina and Virginia. In the Chavis Heights Apartments, John Chavis Memorial Park, Chavis Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, are named after him, as are an academic building, on campus student residence, and boardroom at Washington and Lee University. Several schools are as well, including John Chavis Middle School in Cherryville, North Carolina. So, he was the first African American to go to college in the United States. He was also one of few at that time to preach to both black and white folks. And he had a school where he taught black and white students. But the piece that I want y'all to pull from his story is he tried his best to do what would have been considered right and proper at that time. He tried his best to play the game. He tried his best to not be too loud about being against slavery and being pro abolition. He even went against Nat Turner publicly to save himself. He really thought that if he played his cards right, if he played the game right, the rigged game, that he would be okay. And I will say, the Presbyterian Church took care of him and his family, even after everything went down, even after he could no longer preach or teach. So, shout out to them. But overall, if legend is true about how he left this earth, there was no point in playing the game. None at all. And I feel a kind of way about him publicly speaking against Nat Turner's rebellion. He could have been against it, but he didn't have to say so publicly, especially being that it did not save him in the end. So let that be a lesson to y'all. Maybe, just maybe, you might as well do and say and be for or against whatever you want to be out loud without fear of how you will be viewed and how you will be treated. Because people who hate you, they hate you no matter what you do, whether you play the game their way or not. So do you and make sure you do the right thing. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful, wonderful rest of the evening, and I will holler at y'all later.